somebody say something about don't miss it.
Oh, I can't.
Be there.
Listen, be there because tonight it was on fire. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to a all-new episode of a Wild Time podcast. It's been a little bit, it's been a while, but hey, listen, we're back with a heck of a guest tonight. I have to give my sponsors, Bo's Tractor Works. That's right. I know it's blurry, but Bo's Tractor Works, the Appalachian Hills 11, the best CBD cream in the business. Everybody from Gangrel to Tommy Wildfire Rich to Ricky Morton to Rikishi, you name it, and they use this for their aches and pains. I mean, it has been an absolute help to the elderlies. I mean, the people with arthritis, I mean, it's helping their hands. Huge help to them. Got to give my buddy John Henderson, Brett Wagner, Beatrice Bupley, and all the Doomsday Crypt a shout out. Thank you guys for including me at Scarefest, which was a heck of a time in Lexington, Kentucky. Awesome. Can't wait for next year. But tonight I have an awesome guest. He is that, you know, we're cut from the same cloth. He's an actor. He's a podcast host. He's an author. He was an MMA fighter, a horror fanatic. Just to name a few, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Keith McCleary. What's up, my man?
What's going on, brother? Thanks for having me, first of all. It's totally rad. Like we were talking off air about being a guest on Keep It Real podcast, and then, you know, you were brought up, and like, you know, same thing, same kind of conversation was just, hey, you'd get along with this dude, I think. And I'm like, sign me up, let's do it. And then you reached out, which blew my mind. And I was like, dude, that's cool. I love that. I always love when people reach out. Like I told them, you know, people get in a weird headspace where like, I can't get that person. They wouldn't do much. Oh, really? Like shoot your shot, you know? Like sometimes, man, we're just honored to be able to meet new people. And, you know, so I was so stoked when you asked.
Hey, listen, dude, I appreciate you like giving me, you know, we're on a Saturday night. We could be out doing anything in the world tonight, but hey, listen, we're here to shoot the bull. And like you said, Keep It Real podcast. They're awesome because, you know, I've got to know them through independent professional wrestling. They're really good. They're really passionate about pro wrestling and the independent guys around here. They want to help them, you know, get established and have something people can watch to learn about them. And that's a big deal, man. Like, you know, I've had some really good guests on from the world of horror. I've had UFC legends on and just cool people. But you know, those guys are established and stuff. Get somebody on that's, you know, like local bands. I've had a couple guys on to get them on and help them, you know, maybe push their product or something. That, you know, that's rewarding.
Yeah, man. That's why Cindy reached out to me and she's like, so what would it take to get you on our little show? And I'm like, dude, you just did it. Like all you had to do was ask. I mean, we all start somewhere. And when I got into my line of work, man, there was a day one for me, you know, or nobody owed me anything, but you know what I mean? Like, so I was happy to do it. And if it meant something to them, it's an honor to me to, you know, there's something weird about, like, for me anyway, when you realize you're on somebody's list of people that love to get on their show. And it's like, me though, like, you know what I mean? Like I never get used to that. 8 years later, I'm still tripping. Shout out to your wife, by the way, for being the MVP. You were talking about earlier, having the issue with Zoom and the whole thing, like I tend to do, and saying that she was fixing that. I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
Like, she's getting ready. She's a teacher, but she's working on getting her principalship papers and everything. So she's taking like 2 classes and on top of everything else she does. So yeah, she works hard, and she got the computer set up for me and everything. And she's a big help, dude. I respect her to death. And but yeah, like you know, she's the MVP, I guess, tonight. She got a set up over here. But Tattness, where did that nickname come from, my man? Tattness.
Oh my God. Okay, so I remember doing this show for the UK. I got a lot of love in the UK, which is great. I love that. I'm so grateful for that. And I did this show where they asked me the same thing, and I'm like, sorry, that it's not the most earth-shatteringly interesting story, but back in the day, before all this madness, I was a tattoo artist. And you know how guys are. They're not good at admitting to not remembering things, or
Oh yeah.
we can't admit we don't know the direction somewhere, so we'll just make something up.
Keith, I blame that on concussions from pro wrestling and mixed martial arts whenever I can.
Right. Some of us have that excuse.
Right.
Um, so I had this friend that he was a client of mine, and he brought some new clients, and he was like introducing his friends to me. And I think he honestly straight up forgot my name. So he was just, that's how he introduced me, because I was a tat artist and I was covered in ink myself.
Right.
So he was just like, yeah, this is my tat artist, Tattness, bro. Like, this is, and I was like, oh, word. Like, so then it got weirdly around where that's how people knew me. And I was just like, dude, that's branding right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. That's a brand right there, dude.
It became a thing that, like, this is how they know me. And it just took off and it stuck with people. So it was kind of like, all right, it makes sense. But the dopest part about that for me is it's weirdly fitting that like my wife's dope as hell. Like, she's like the most patient person, because like she's around for a lot of my shows and
Right.
like guest spots and whatever. So like she has to hear questions and answers like all the time. So she hears the same thing all the time, and she's so chill and supportive. I'm like, you must get sick of hearing the stories, because her friends come around and like so fascinated by like what I've experienced, and
Everything you got going on,
yeah, man. So they ask all the questions they can, and it's, you kind of have to repeat yourself all the time, and she has to sit and listen to it. So shout out to her. She's so awesome like that. But it's like she would point out to me, we'd be at a restaurant like a couple weeks back, and she's like, that waitress is staring at you like hard. Like, she kind of knows who you are, but she's not sure, and sees weird things like that. And I'm like, so it's so fitting that it's like you got this branding name, because it's like I get to slip into that. And I don't want to say character because it's myself, but you can just slip into who that person is, do your job, get that out, and then I can just go grocery shopping and people don't really bother me. Like they'll look and they'll be like, oh my God, I think that's, who it is. But they're respectful, because you made yourself accessible enough from day one that it's not like they feel they got to come and approach you. Like, you'll get people come ask you to sign stuff or whatever, but they're not like, so it's fitting that you get to be that person to do your job. And then, okay, now I'm going to go do normal life stuff and people will be all right. I mean, I've had weird things where like I've been filmed in a bulk store by a fan that recognized me. He just started filming me from a distance, and I kind of felt bad, because I'm like, dude, if you just came up and said something to me, like you could have got a picture or a video with me and had a conversation, the whole thing. I'm not that guy. Like, you know what I mean? I'm approachable. I'm friendly enough, I think, that so I kind of felt bad. Other people are like, dude, that's such an invasion of privacy. Like, you didn't even ask first. And I'm on the other side of it, just feeling bad. Like, dude, if you just came up to me, we could have had a good conversation.
That's interesting, though. You brought up, you said, I don't want to slip into a character, but you get to be that. And that's kind of like with me on my professional wrestling character is it's really me, honestly. Like, I don't have to, I'm just a horror loving, loose cannon, over the top type of, and I don't have to act. I mean, that's who I am. I just crank it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard to go into something. You know what I mean?
Right.
The best characters or the best personalities is that of yourself, just cranked up a little bit.
Yeah, up to 11, I say,
Exactly.
because you got to be interesting enough. But like, then in my personal life, I'm like, I view myself as like very introverted, even though people are like, you're such a people person. And I'm like, but I'm not. Like, I can be when I need to be. But at the same time, if I'm around a lot of people and different energies and personalities, it exhausts me, where I'll have to be like alone for days to just kind of get my energy back.
Yeah.
Not that anything negative happens or anything. It's just exhausting.
Exhausting.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird like that. But I'm just a like kind of chill person that just I don't need to be doing stuff all the time.
Right.
So it's so weird, I think, that the introverted people are always the ones that end up with careers like this. Right? It's chaotic because it makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, my
But here we
wife,
are.
we're like polar opposites when it comes to that. She's like she's the one that would rather just be at the house reading a book or, just be by herself. Or I'm, David Lee Roth, out and about, I'm just the way I've always been. So, we kind of balance each other out, I guess you would say, in
Yeah.
situations like that.
That's awesome, man. That's the way it should be. And I'm so grateful like to have somebody that gets it, that kind of just wants to chill, but at the same time, when the time comes, she gets it.
She's
We can
up
go
for
out
it.
and do the things that need to be done. And but she's the one that always points out like somebody recognizes you and is like being
Right.
more than chill about it. They're just kind of staring, or I don't notice these things. You know what I mean? She's the one that points it out. And she's like, dude, this person is like really figuring it out. Man, that's so funny to me because I never really catch it.
I don't know why, but it kind of makes me think of Dick Warlock, who played Michael Myers in part two. I'd met him a few times at conventions, and his wife was just like the sweetest lady ever. And she would be always at his table. And when people came up, they were both talking, and she was just so supportive of him. And you could tell she was proud. And I could just, you know, getting somebody that's got your back like that, dude,
Yeah.
and I mean, and supportive of what we do, you and I, it's just it's a big blessing for real.
Oh, for sure. And she said the nicest thing to me today too, where like I was kind of, I don't know, I said something derogatory about myself, like I tend to do. I have self-deprecating humor. And she just kind of calls me on it. She's just like, dude, do you know who the hell you are? Like,
Yeah.
what? You know what I mean? Like, there was a time you didn't know who the hell I was. Like, she found out about my career and everything after we met.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, you're with someone for the right reasons. Like, they're
Well, I
not.
tell you what, Keith, tell us how that career started. Because you've done a lot of different things, man. I mean, I got to reading on here. I mean, you've got some cool stuff coming up. Also, I wanted to talk about with our good buddy Mick Strawn. But what was the first thing you took a stab at? No pun intended. I see Ghostface back there, but what was the first thing that grabbed your attention, dude?
So I was really weird story. I was in like I'm from Toronto originally, and you'll appreciate how this weirdly comes full circle. But so I was in Toronto and I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, what do I want to do? I owned a bar for a little while. And then I was like, this isn't working out. Business partner that's just about the money and like risking our profession for money, over serving people, the whole thing. Not listening to me when I'm like, that needs to stop. And I was just like, it's not worth it. I'm going to go to, college and whatever. So I go to college for business accounting because I kind of did it for a living as part of one of my jobs. And I kind of, I spent so much time in the gym at that point that I was like, I'm a physical dude.
Right.
I'm not sitting behind a desk for a living. So I signed up for the military and I qualified for the trades I wanted, did the whole thing. And then because it's Canada, they're like, there's a 3-year wait list to actually get in. And I'm like, well, I got to do something in the meantime. I'm in the gym 3-4 hours a day at this point because I'm obsessed. Uh, Hit 265 of muscle mass. Like I was just,
Oh,
nonstop.
what are you, 6'5" anyways?
Yeah, 6'5", yeah.
Okay, you're a
Yeah.
big dude anyway. So 6'5", 265, you should have been in the wrestling ring, dude.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, what am I gonna do? And my child, like, or before we had a kid, but the person I was with at the time, I said to her, I'm like, hey, I had this idea. How would you feel about me getting into MMA? And she, without batting an eye, was like, dude, you're like built for it. It'd be ridiculous if you didn't do it. So I was like, dude, that's more support than I expected.
Right.
So I was like, cool. Now I got something to train for. And we moved back to a place where I grew up. And I found out when we got there, there's this new MMA gym that opened up that happened to be owned and operated by Anthony Corelli, Santino Marella, as
Right.
most people know him. So I was like, get out of here. And I found out he's from the same city that I grew up in. So I was like, that's crazy. I got to go check this place out.
That's cool.
Walked in, fell in love with it. Amazing facility, an Olympic quality facility. And I met him and it just all snowballed. And before you know it, this is what I'm doing. But her and I had a child together. And unfortunately, he was born with a very rare terminal condition and there was no cure.
I'm so sorry, dude.
I appreciate you. So, that pushed me to appreciate things more on his behalf. I was told, you got to live for two now. Do the things he can't do, appreciate the things he can't. So I stopped telling myself something's not for me and, I can't do this and it's not, I'm not good enough for that, whatever. But at the same time with MMA, like I took a big step back because I wanted to be there for when he needed me because we didn't know. Like they gave him 2 weeks to live. He gave us 2 years. 9 days after he turned 2 years old, he passed. He decided he was done fighting.
Well, he was a fighter, man. I mean,
so I started my own show. And one day I had these guests and they asked me to be on their show. I'm like, cool. Think nothing of it. I'm like, all right, podcasters, whatever, right. Cool. But at this point, I've had everybody from Kenny Olson, Kid Rock's guitarist, to Scott Page from Pink Floyd on my show, Dave Fairst, like name them. They've been there. So I go and I do their show and I find out that the other guest at the same time is Mona Marshall from South Park. And I was like, oh, no way. I love that show.
Yeah.
So I do this show and they're like, dude, you're 6'5", 265 a muscle. And you have this energy about you. Why are you not in movies? Why are you not the next Myers or Voorhees? Why are you not doing movies in general?
Right.
I was like, honestly, nobody asked. I was like, I don't think Hollywood wants anything more to do with me than what's already been forced upon them. So that's why. And they're like, hold up. So you're saying if you had the opportunity, you'd want to get into acting? And I'm like, yeah, well, why not? And they're like, well, we're producers. We'll talk off air. And I'm like, what? Like this just immediately became a thing. And before I knew it, on social media, because that was a live show, people were watching this, catching wind of this. Before it was over, by the time I got off air, I had my social media blown right up with directors and, casting directors and producers and the whole lot. Hey, heard you're looking to do movies. And I'm like, whoa, dude, what's going on here? So it just kind of fell into my lap, so to speak.
Sometimes things happen for a reason. And it sounds like that right there, dude, it was just meant to happen.
So weird. So it all took off, and then I became friends with so many people in the industry that it was just like people whose work I grew up watching, and I'm just like, I don't even know what's happening anymore. And like it's been 8 years now since day one with MMA, and I don't even know anymore half the stuff. Like I even said to you off air, and I'm not trying to sound any sort of like arrogant. It was more my terrible memory. Everything's such a blur that I'm like, dude, if you Google search my name, you'll probably find out more than I remember about myself. Because there was a time with my show, I had 4 guests a day on, and the shows were minimum an hour.
God.
So I don't remember I got to go to IMDb to see who I had on my show. I'm like, oh yeah, you mentioned Kenny Aronoff, and I'm like,
yeah, Kenny Aronoff's one of my favorite drummer. I always put Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones. He was my favorite drummer. But Aronoff's right there because he's such a great studio player, man. And he's played with the best of the best. And I was checking your stuff out. I was like, dude, that's a heck of a get right there.
Yeah, he was like, I was told I got to do your show. Like, so he wanted to be on. I'm like, of course. And then during the show, he's like, let me give you my number. You need to text me and stay in touch on the whole thing. And I'm just like, what is going on? And again, no disrespect to Kenny. I forgot about him being on until you mentioned it. I'm like, oh yeah, he was too. And I'm like, I need to text him and apologize, man. Like, there's just so many people. I think that week I had him, it was him, Scott Page from Pink Floyd, Toto, and Supertramp.
Yeah.
Dig Farish, Kenny Olson, and Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction and Nine Inch Nails, who is also an Encino Man, which I loved.
Oh yeah, Polly Shore.
Yeah, dude. And I'm like,
Such a, I think we're around the same age. I'm 38, about to turn 39 next month. That's such a childhood movie. Polly Shore movies, Encino Man, In the Army Now, all those movies.
I saw it in the theater. I'm gonna be 41 in January.
See, we're right around the same age, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you mentioned Encino Man. I can remember my next door neighbor bringing it when we rented it at the store, and he's like, "Man, we're going to watch it tonight." I was like, "Well, yeah, bring it over." And Brendan Fraser, it was just like his breakout deal right there.
Right. Mick Strawn, as we talked about too, was the first guest on my show ever.
Really?
Yeah, he was.
Wow, that's cool, man. That's cool to know right there.
And the funny thing is, he loves to bust my chops. And so when I told him, he texted me, and I was like, "Sorry, brother, I couldn't respond right away. I just did 2 shows. One was Scott Page from Pink Floyd, and the other was Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction." And he sarcastically says, "Why don't you get some real guests?" I cracked up because I could sense the sarcasm.
Right.
Legends. And I'm just like, well, they can't all be Mick Strawn, so my bad.
I love Mick. Mick was one of my first guests also. And I'm the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my franchise, and part 3 is like my favorite. It's the movie that made me fall in love with the horror genre. And when I got Mick on, and he broke down the terror truck in part 3 about what went, through his mind in creating that, the gas station. I mean, I was just like a kid in a candy store because all that stuff meant so much to me. Stuff that certain people could care less about. It was a big deal to me. And he was, he was hilarious too. And he owes me an episode about Boogie Nights. He was on Boogie Nights, and that's one of my favorite movies. And he said he's got some really good stories. So Mick, when you come on, we'll be talking Boogie Nights.
With Mick, it was a weird thing. I had seen that he was on Facebook, and I was like, this dude did everything I grew up loving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I reached out, and I'm like, I got to get you on the show, bro. To his credit, he was like, sure. And I was like, just that easy?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, great. And then all of a sudden he calls me out of nowhere. My phone just starts ringing, and it's Mick. And I'm like, oh, dude's phoning me. So I answered. He's like, hey, I know you. I was like, we've never met. Trust me, I would have known. I would have been thrilled. He's like, no, I mean, I know you. I know who you are. I know your work. Like, this is going to be cool. And I'm like, what? Like, my childhood, you had a big part of without realizing it. And for you to say that. And then we became brothers like immediately. Like he called me on Christmas that year, and like ever since.
Always has his little dog with him at the convention when I go see him at Scarefest. He's always got the little dog at the booth with him, man. It's so cool because I'm a dog myself.
I love that you said that, because the day we were doing the show, he's like, hey, can we push it back like 45 minutes? He's like, my wife's making me wash the dog. I was like,
he loves that dog, because I'm telling you, I rolled up and talked to him at the conventions, and that little, I mean, it's hilarious. That little dog's just, I mean, and you can tell how close he is with that dog, man.
Right. We were just discussing today, like, the funniest story with Mick was that he always busts my chops for being Canadian. So after he did my show, I think it was the second time, because he's been on a few times now.
Yeah.
Him and Nick Benson the second time, which was really cool. Because Nick Benson, for anyone that doesn't know, did Tremors and all that. And I was like, dude, I was 7 years old when I saw Tremors for the first time. So I got to tell Benson, I'm like, and we're buddies now. I'm like, bro, the floor was lava for 2 weeks because of you. Like you did this to me. Love him for it.
Yeah.
But Mick did the show for another, at least a second time at that point. And he had to call me. He was dying laughing because he posted on Facebook. He's like, "Hey everybody, my special needs friend from a special needs country had me on his show, and well, he did his best. Go check it out." And I died laughing. He calls me cracking up. He's like, "Dude, my wife saw that and said to me, why would you talk about your friend like that? That's terrible." And he's like, "She doesn't get it, dude." I was like, "No, clearly not. Like, this is how we are with each other. We
joke with one another.
we pick on each other,
Right.
And it's like, she didn't get it. And she's like, "What a terrible thing to say about your friend." And we were both cracking up.
What movies inspired you, dude, to get into acting? I mean, what movies you grew up with? Which ones were your
Oh my
favorite?
God. That's really funny because I mean, I love movies and I got my top, few, but I don't think any movies were what made me like. Again, it was just the opportunity and just wanting to make my son proud. And um, I never fancied myself an actor by any stretch of the imagination. It's not what I saw for myself, but it just worked out.
Yeah.
But I loved Halloween. I loved Nightmare on Elm Street, like a ridiculous amount. Um, it's stuff like that I grew up with that I absolutely adored. And anything Schwarzenegger
Oh
was
gosh.
super rad to me.
Dude, when I was like, from the time I was probably 4 to 6 years old, I thought I was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, honestly, I had so many toy guns that I would carry in a satchel to my brother's basketball games. And I mean, I was always in the hills fighting the Predator or getting
Right.
the guns ready, like at the end of Raw Deal when he goes into that underground mob place, shoots them. I mean, Schwarzenegger was one of the biggest, and still to this day, like, I'm 38, I'm a pro wrestler, but I try to stay big and in shape. And I look at him and Stallone, and they're in their 70s and they're still getting a pump. I mean, that's stuff I want to try to achieve.
Right. I think Terminator 2 is well documented to be one of my all-time favorite movies ever. Right behind you, Rocky. I can't forget that. That was obviously still to this day one of the best movies ever. Um, as a creator, I feel like the biggest compliment someone could possibly receive is when a city straight up treats a character you created like they're a real person and symbolizes that every chance they get. They're so proud of it. Like, that's got to be the coolest reward, as a creator of anything.
I mean, that is, that's having the Rocky on the steps, the statue and everything, man. That is which it's such a inspirational movie. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than, it's honestly more than a movie. People still train to the soundtracks. I mean, it's something that's going to live on. And it's crazy because I watched the Expendables 4 last night. I was like, I haven't got to watch the Expendables 4 yet. And I was really big on the first 2 or 3. And I watched it last night. And I was like, man, CGI is killing me. God. I mean, I don't know how you feel about CGI, but man, it is so, like, it's not what I grew up with, I guess you would say,
Yeah. I'm right there with you, man. I'm a practical effects kind of cat. It's old school. I get it. But it's just, there's nothing like it. I'm not someone that hates on the reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street by any stretch of the imagination. I thought, you know what? As a standalone, treat it like it is. Let's get past the fact it's not Robert and all that. Not a bad movie, but I will sit and I will pick at certain things where I'm like, dude, the practical looked way better than the CGI.
And in my opinion, Jackie Earle Haley was probably the best choice that they could have got to play Freddy, if not a top 3. And there's not, and it was obvious that role of Freddy Krueger is just one. I mean, it's about like the Rocky. Nobody can play Rocky Balboa, in my opinion.
No.
And you've seen it, and Jackie Earle Haley's a heck of an actor.
Yeah, I agree.
And but Kevin Bacon, I know they had threw his name around a few times, but and I just, like you said, as a standalone movie, and I went into that, how you felt about Nightmare when Texas Chainsaw remake come out. I was really excited, but so much of like the original is who I am as a person. Like I loved the three brothers, you know, as the family, because I was the youngest of three brothers. It's kind of, but when they added all these new dynamics, I went in with an open mind. I was like, all right, it's a re-envision, it's reimagining.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best remakes, I thought, you know, and I was going to be the harshest judge of it. So, and I appreciate like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I liked it. There was certain things, you know, I love the scene when they chase Freddy Krueger, you know, to the building when they throw the fire in, and you know,
Yeah.
that was a cool scene.
I loved it. But I view things different than most people, I think. Like, I'm not mad. I grew up as a kid, huge Ninja Turtles fan.
Me too.
I'm not gonna sit here and say I get the newer version or I'm a fan of it, but I'm glad it exists.
Right.
We have our version that we grew up with. I love to see someone's creation live on for the next future kids to fall in love with it as their own. You know what I mean? We had ours.
Mm-hmm.
They might not relate to ours. This is for them. We're not supposed to get it.
Right.
And you know, if I create something that people find so rad that they want it to live on through different variations, if that's what keeps it alive, that's a huge compliment.
Major compliment. And you know, it will encourage them to go back and research the original stuff. And they may find a love for the original also. And that's, you know, I'm a big Fright Night fan. I love the original Fright Night. And when I was like, man, Colin Farrell as Jerry Dandridge, heck, that's right down my alley. I like Colin Farrell. I can see it. And, you know, I like that remake. I thought that they done it well. They didn't, you know, I would have loved to seen the club scene been a little different, but other than that, I was happy with that. But you know, that movie was hip to the newer generation, and maybe they'll go back and check the old Fright Night out.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's you know, again, you're keeping something alive that was so good that it deserves to be preserved. And you know, some things don't translate to people decades later. And then some things still hold up. Terminator 2, for example, still holds up in every way. Nightmare on Elm Street holds up in every way. Halloween still holds up, I feel, you know. So I think, though, there is something to be said for having such a respect for something that you could revisit it and kind of breathe new life into it. When I had Dig Farish on the show, he's a friend of mine. I told him, I was like, dude, in Rob Zombie's Halloween remake, you were insanely good, especially for his age.
Yeah.
And he cracked me up because he was like, dude, Rob went all out with the food. The catering was just top notch. He's like, that's why, he's like, you might notice in Hancock, I was a little pudgier because all that food I had on the set of Halloween. And I was like, dude, that's hilarious. You know,
awesome that you've had him on your show. You know, and you've had CJ Graham from Friday the 13th. I've had some, you know, I've had Texas Chainsaw. I've had Darcy DeMoss from Friday the 13th 6. I've had, you know, Mick Strawn, who was involved with Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't think I've had anybody from Halloween yet. That's, you know, that's cool that you've got that in your belt, dude.
Oh yeah, Dig's a good friend of mine. I actually, the same week I had him on, I think it was a day or two later, his mom was on.
Oh, really?
On my show. Yeah, because for people that don't know, she's also an actress. Back in her earlier days, she was in burlesque even.
Wow.
Yeah, she's had a quite interesting career. And now she's his manager and agent, basically. So, you know, it was cool to have her on too. She was fascinating. And yeah, Mick, of course. Mick is always going to be Mick. I love him. He was on my radio show for Halloween. Him and Joe Castro, who was credited with giving me my first acting opportunity, with Linnea Quigley, who played Trash from.
Oh yeah, love Linnea. She was Return of the Living Dead. She was.
Yep.
She's. I mean, just a legendary scream queen.
So imagine my first movie gig. I get to work with her. And I don't know if you've ever seen Girl on the Third Floor with Phil CM Punk.
I remember that movie coming out. It was a horror movie, wasn't it?
It was an acid trip of gore. Like,
yeah,
it starts
I remember.
super chill, and then it gets graphic at a like left field, and I'm like, whoa, like. But the girl that was in that was also in the first movie I did, and Joe Castro. I was telling Keep It Real podcast like he would be salty if I didn't mention this because he's so proud of it. But he like that dude worked on everything like Harry Potter, and then he's a director and an effects guy. So him and Mick Strawn worked together on Friday the 13th Vengeance.
Yeah.
And so Joe was a director for this movie, created this movie I was asked to be a part of. And he also holds a record in Guinness Book of Records for the most kills in a slasher film.
Wow. That's
155 kills, dude.
What was it in? This movie?
It was a movie called The Summer of Massacre, and it was just a kill fest. It was 155 kills throughout the movie.
Good grief.
So he's going to remaster that and re-release it, but at the same time, he's adding to it to break his own record.
Wow.
And so on my Halloween radio show in October that just passed, he was like, I want all my friends in it. So he's like, dude, how would you feel about being decapitated? Like,
an honor.
I was like, dude, I would love to. Who could not use a good beheading once in a while? You know what I'm saying? I know I could go for one.
Now, you were actually, you're friends with Jan Birch, who was in People Under the Stairs, right? And
yeah.
if I, like I said, I was doing my homework. I like doing my homework on my guests. People Under the Stairs 2 was it in pre-production or something? I mean,
it was going to be a series for Netflix.
Yes. Okay, got you. Explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, dude. So he was on my show and we became instant friends, just like pretty much every other guest, which is super cool. And I was like, back in the 90s, man, I said, this is the weirdest thing. We had this thing called Viewer's Choice Pay-Per-View where you ordered movies. Right. So they had a channel that was just this endless loop of trailers of what they had currently playing that you could order. And People Under the Stairs was one of them. And I was like, I would sit and watch that trailer over and over again and just be like, dude, that's weird. Like, that's creepy. I never thought in a million years, like a bunch of years later, here's the dude that was in it, sitting in his car doing my show, and then telling me, because I had a guest immediately after him, I had to end it at an hour. He's like, we got to do this again. That was not nearly enough time. He was having such a great time. And what really hit me is in 2015, I was breaking into the industry through MMA, and Wes Craven had passed. And he told me, he's like, honestly, Wes would have loved you and would have loved to work with you. And I was like, dude, that's the most bittersweet thing anyone could say to me, because that's my childhood right there. And it's like, that's the biggest compliment, but at the same time breaks my heart because it'll never happen because he's gone.
That is crazy you say that, because everybody that knows me knows that Ravishing Rick Rude is like my hero. And he's the reason I got in the wrestling business.
Love Rick.
I've befriended I've had his son on my show. And, I got close with his sister through Facebook, and, she's just a sweetheart of a lady. And she said, let me tell you something, Adam. She said, you make me think a lot of my brother when he was younger. She said, he would have loved you. He was a family man. He loved his kids, when he was, and I was like, wow, that hits you right. That hits you right square. When you get that, somebody knows your person that you looked up to, and they, validate and say they see something in you that I don't get it. Like you said, man, with Wes Craven, would have loved you. It was kind of the same deal there.
Yeah, dude. And so the whole show, basically, Jan talked to me about how Wes was and his experience working with him, and said the last thing they talked about was Wes contacted him and said, I want to do a People Under the Stairs series for Netflix. Are you interested? And he's like, absolutely. So he said, I didn't have the heart to take it down off IMDb because of Wes's memory. It was the last thing he talked about. He's like, I'm keeping it up in his honor so people know it was going to be a thing.
Right.
And then later that year, Jan Birch is hitting me up on Facebook on my wall saying happy birthday. And I'm like, dude, what happened here? You just trip out a little bit.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many people I know in the industry, I still sit back once in a while when people react kind of funny to it. Like my wife goes nuts and she's like, hold up, like, do you realize who you know? And like, so I'm doing a radio show in February for her birthday.
Oh, that's cool, man.
And I've reached out to all her favorite celebrities that are friends of mine. And like, it'd mean a lot. You know, I never ask anything of y'all, but it would be super rad if you could give birthday wishes and they did not hesitate. So the names is like, dude, everyone from Gordon Ramsay to Dwayne Johnson to Kevin Hart to Schwarzenegger. It's wild. Marshall, 50. It's crazy, right? So I start when people react weird to that, I trip out, and then I'm just
Yeah.
like, that is weird, isn't it? Like small world, full circle.
You said it, about getting guests on your show. I mean, what's it hurt to ask? That's how you get your guests, because you never know like who's going to say yeah, or who, so what if 10 say no? If you get somebody you look up to that says yeah, that's what it's all about.
Right. The biggest compliment I think in memory was that someone came on my show. I think it was Aronoff actually, and said, "Dude, Scott Page told me I absolutely have to do your show because he had such a great time." And I was like, "Dude from Pink Floyd, like, you know, he had that much fun doing something right,
Like
I
you said,
guess."
that's the best compliment. When they pass it on to the others, like you need to do this, it's like you're getting an A+ on a report card, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
honestly.
So my child that, like I said, passed, right? So here's where it's kind of funny. I think you would appreciate you know, Orangeville, where Adam and Jay, Edge and Christian are from.
Yeah.
There's a tree planted in my son's memory there in Orangeville, because that's where he spent a lot of time going to specialists and things. So it's kind of full circle,
That is cool. That is cool, dude. Heck,
you know.
that's something that's always going to be there in your son's memory. You can always go there and kind of have your moment. You know what I mean, dude?
Yeah, and there's always
Cool.
something wrestling related kind of tied
Yeah.
to these things. That's really bizarre because wrestling related is what got my career started because of who owned the gym.
Yeah.
And then, like it's just a weird full circle life. It's just so bizarre when you think about it. You trip out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if you would have told me when I was 5 years old that, because I used to watch, like I said, Chainsaw 3 was my, if you would have told me that, you're going to be friends with the guy that played Leatherface and, you're going to be doing this YouTube channel and you and him are going to be talking back and forth, you're going to be talking to him at conventions, he's going to be shooting you, man. I'd been like, no, ain't no way, man. But I mean, it's just, I mean, like Dan Yeager, who played Leatherface in Chainsaw 3D, I had his mom on Facebook, and she was an older lady, man, and she was just so cool. She messaged him because I was like the first guy that reached out to him because I was doing my research, and Dan Yeager, I was like, well, I'm gonna try to find him. Well, I've done my research and I sent him I was like, you know what? If this dude responds, cool. If not, I sent him a few questions and he wrote back like paragraphs about his experience on the film and everything. And so much so that like I think Dread Central or Bloody Disgusting or someone had seen that, and like took it and they was like, all right, new Leatherface speaks out about the new film. But his mother had like got a hold of him and was like, do you care to send him some autographs and stuff? So Dan Yeager had sent me like stuff from set, stuff. I mean, just autographs. I mean, it just might, like you said, you got to sit back and like, wow. I mean, these moments are
Right.
pretty cool.
Yeah, man. And it blows my mind. I was hit up back in 2020 and they wanted to make a documentary about my life. And I was like, dude, that's wild. All right, let's do it. So I did it, put it out on DVD, sold out immediately day one, all autographed copies. And later after that, Sherry Nelson, a Maxim magazine model and actress, contacted me.
Yeah.
She was on my show at one point. So she contacts me. She's a friend of mine. And she was like, I have a question. I'm like, okay. Hopefully I have an answer. And she's like, so Michael Neely, A&R guy for Def Jam Records, has this magazine he owns with Diddy. Him and Puff are like co-owners of this magazine. And he's letting me interview somebody for it for my first ever interview. I get to pick anyone I want. I would love it, if you would be the one that let me interview you. And I'm like, dude, of course. That's like huge high praise, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, I read up on you and I know some things. So I think you'd be interested in knowing as much as you love the guy. Michael Neely was best friends with Rick James when he was alive. And I was like, what? I was like, I am so floored by this. I was and
Oh,
he's
were
like,
you a
yeah,
Rick James fan?
big time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love Rick James, dude. I always like Rick James.
Little weird like side note with me is every summer, for some reason, it became a thing where I listen to Rick James and make homemade barbecue sauces. I
Well,
just
send me
blast
a
it.
jar of that next summer, dude.
Oh yeah, for sure. I
I'm a
make
big barbecue guy.
jalapeno honey, Kansas City, tequila lime,
Good night.
and I just blast some Rick James. We went windows open, enjoying the weather, and just make barbecue sauces. It's a weird little tradition
That's
now
pretty
that just
cool, though, man. That's a heck of a tradition, if you ask me.
so like Michael Neely is still in touch with Rick's daughter. They're very close. And I'm like, that's the coolest thing, dude. Like so weird. And such an honor for her to pick me of all people. She's like, your story is just so fascinating. You've had this terrible life. You lost a child and everything else, and yet here you are. You're someone that grew up being told you would never be nothing. Your old man's abusive and the whole thing, and never knew your mom and whatever. And now look at you. Like you just snap your fingers and try something new, and here you are making a name for yourself in every field. She's like, I thought it was really inspiring, and I thought people would get something out of it. And I was like, dude, that's a huge compliment to me.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I feel like keeps me youthful. Is I'm the same way. I was doing high school basketball broadcasting. I just set my phone up one day at my old high school and started broadcasting almost as a joke. And like it started getting a lot of viewers, and people was like, man, you need to keep doing this. So, anyways, I started my own like high school, middle school, like broadcasting. We were going around doing all the games, and it got such a following. So I started doing that for a couple of years with wrestling, with podcast, and I've kind of died down. My father-in-law loves to do that, so it's kind of something cool that he gets to do now, and he can just take it and do what he wants. But I feel like I've got to do something. I feel like after I've kind of done something, I got like this podcast meeting. I've met so many cool people, yourself included, doing this that I could see myself, staying busy with this for quite some time.
Yeah, dude, like you're good at it. Just wanted to put that out there that I'm a fan of your show.
I appreciate it, buddy.
I loved it. First one I checked out was, you mentioned Beatrice, right?
Yeah.
And she's a friend of mine. And I'm like, I got to check that one out. And I was like, dude, I'm even more jazzed about doing this show now than I ever was.
Right.
Because it was just like so well done. The conversation was great. And I'm like, I'm known for being that dude that doesn't shut the hell up. So like, I'm like,
I'm there with you.
I love that this dude wants to talk and like,
Yeah.
have a conversation and get to know the guest. And I think that's so cool because there's a lot of, and I'm not knocking anybody. It's just, you can tell when sometimes people are a little inexperienced or they don't quite,
Almost,
they don't feel like they're in their element yet. So
Yeah.
it's a very robotic Q&A kind of, there's not much conversation to be had.
Right.
There's no chance to follow up on an answer. It's just answer the question, they move on to the next. And so, I mean, when you got someone that is really good at this, it's a conversation, even if there are questions, it's an organic conversation. And that's what I found with your show. I was like, dude, I'm so into this. I was so excited to like do this. Last night, the wife was just like probably annoyed as hell because I wouldn't stop talking about it. Like, I'm so jazzed to do the show tomorrow. And
Dude, you want to talk about getting compliments? You're giving me an A+ straight across the board right now. My face is going. I won't be able to get upstairs. My head's going to swell.
it's so true though. Like, I'm always excited when I'm asked to do a show. Like, I've done so many that I forget half of them, to be honest. No disrespect to anyone.
Right.
It's just I've done so many over the years. Like I got hit up to do lifestyles with Dr. Moby, and I'm like, dude, when a PhD holding doctor wants to pick your brain, you've done something, I guess, right? So, I've done some really rad shows, but I'm always excited to do shows because it's always very high praise when somebody's like, I need you on my show. Like, I got a list of people I need to talk to. You're one of them. It would complete my career kind of deal. That's a huge compliment. But then there's shows where you're just so jazzed to do it because it resonates with you somehow. It's something you just feel is totally up your alley, And this was that one in recent memory where I'm just like, damn, I can't wait. Like, this is gonna be a blast.
Listen, I hope I did good so far. And like I said, I'm not going to keep you on here all night. We've had some, and I plan on bringing you back on. Just, I mean, anytime you want to. We could do several. I mean, as much as we love the same stuff, we can break down a scary movie and just talk about it. There's a lot of stuff we can do, Keith. I mean, that's just the way that it is.
Hell yeah.
I mean,
when. I'm down. I'll do this every weekend. I don't.
We may break down the Running Man one night. Who knows?
Right? That'd be so dope. I haven't seen that in a minute, so it'd be cool to kind of get a refresher on that.
Well, I've got some questions for the fans to get to know you a little bit before we end. And I always do this with all my guests. So the first one's going to be, what is your your favorite 3 horror movies of all time or franchises? Either one you want to do, my man.
Definitely Nightmare on Elm Street 1. Halloween, of course, probably the first one as well, because
Yeah.
The third one, that one's gonna be a little tough. Damn. I don't want to disappoint anybody here, but
it's all about you. You ain't going to disappoint nobody, my man. If you say Popcorn from 1990, we'll be happy.
When you know so many people in these movies, you don't want to offend anyone,
right?
But I think Nightmare on Elm Street 3 would be the other one.
Oh gosh, Dream Warriors is awesome.
Loved it.
Dream Warriors is awesome. And I found a Dream Warriors shirt. We were on our way on a cruise and we stopped at Walmart. I was like, man, I need a pair of swimming trunks and just a comfortable shirt because we were on the road forever. We walked in this Walmart. They had a Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 Dream Warrior shirt for like $7. And I'm like, get me an extra large. No, give me a 2X because I don't want it to shrink. This is a killer shirt. And right. I still wear that shirt, man, everywhere. I mean, stuff you would have to go through Facebook, or not Facebook, but like, the internet to order these cool shirts. I mean, it was a Walmart for $8. And I was like, man, you gotta be kidding me. But yeah, excellent 3 choices there, Keith. Loved the original Halloween. I mean, it don't get no better than that. The original Nightmare was so, my mom, she pretty much was responsible for getting me into scary movies. And that was the one she always said, now, Freddy's about the only one that can really scare me because, that's when you go to sleep. That was how she kind of put it in my head as a kid. But those are choices, man. And you being a mixed martial artist like myself, we have our favorite guys that we looked up to, guys that encouraged us in training, guys we wanted to emulate. Who would be your 3 MMA fighters that you looked up to or you enjoyed watching?
Dang. I gotta say early in, like, we're going way back. Ken Shamrock, of course.
Love Shamrock. He was the first guy that I loved.
Yeah. Same. That's who really got me into it. Currently, I know it's not going to be a popular thing to say, but McGregor is someone who I found entertaining.
Yeah.
I feel like he got it. You look at Rousey, the second she lost, her career was pretty much done because she had no personality. She was like an android, like there's no dollar value there. So I think Conor got it. And I love the entertainment aspect of that. So, I mean, I could obviously say like Gracie and those legends, Severn, but
I trained with Dan. Dan's actually a pretty good friend of mine. And, if Dan Severn had learned boxing when he was younger, the damage he could have done, not even boxing, but just stand up, because he was, like he told me, he said, I didn't know, I didn't punch. He said, I'm just a world-class wrestler, to imagine how scary that Dan Severn would have been with good hands at that point would have been.
He was already dangerous,
right? Yeah. I mean, his suplexes, I'm sure you've seen his suplexes as well. I mean, he was
an animal.
Yeah.
But again, to go the route of entertaining and good, I love Derek Lewis. That dude is hilarious. And he just comes by it honestly. Like he knows. He just waits for his spot and he gets that one punch that just does the job. And I just love him for it. You
Derek
know,
Lewis is, and I think George Foreman may have worked with him some, honestly. And George Foreman's my favorite boxer ever.
he's
And
fantastic.
oh yeah, man, just I mean his whole story. I mean, they just released a movie about him. Have you seen it, Big George?
I have not yet, but I intend to. And
I would check it out, man. It's a pretty good watch.
speaking of boxing too, like you'll probably appreciate this. Someone that I had the privilege of meeting numerous times was George Chuvalo, who, for those that don't know, is a Canadian boxer who's the only boxer that Muhammad Ali could not knock down, let alone out.
Yeah.
Couldn't knock him off his feet to save his life.
Yeah.
Muhammad fought him twice and said, you know what? I talked a lot of trash, but he's the toughest man I've ever fought. And no, I don't want to fight him again.
And you've got to meet him a few times, you say?
Yeah, thankfully.
That's
Such an
cool.
honor.
That
You
is
know,
cool.
legend. So I thought you'd appreciate that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And Muhammad Ali's got his own they got his museum in Louisville. And man, I'm telling you, you could spend a whole day in there. I took my little boy down about 2 years ago. I took him to a boxing gym down there, TKO boxing, and we made a day out of it. We went to the Muhammad Ali Center, and I'm telling you, it is mind blowing at all the memorabilia, I mean, it's something I'm very glad we did. If you ever get the opportunity, if you're in
Oh
Kentucky,
yeah.
check that out, dude.
Oh, dude, that'd be so cool. Um, yeah, dude was obviously a legend and brilliant. That would be the coolest thing for
It
sure.
was, I had people had told me they're like, it's cool to check out, and I was like, this will be all right, go in there. But I couldn't believe like there was a shadow, like him shadow boxing, a shadow of his old shadow, and you get to go and try to spar with it and stuff. And man, it was really neat. I mean, there was some cool stuff in there.
That's so cool.
All right, your three favorite bands or musicians?
Oh my God. That's a tough one. I mean, it always changes, right? But um damn. I gotta say bands. Shout out to my boy Corey. Slipknot, definitely big one for me. Uh, Corn was another huge one for me. Damn. I'm gonna go with Hell Yeah for my third, just because it's such a great mix of, like, you had Vinnie Paul, rest
Yeah,
his soul.
I
You
thought
know,
they had some good stuff, man. I really did.
yeah,
I liked their couple albums they come out with.
yeah, man.
Well done.
Big Mudvayne fan and Pantera fan, so it's like the best of both, right? And
And I mean, they showed, it wasn't just like heavy. I mean, they had some stuff on there that was, almost folk country like, man. It was, I mean,
yeah,
they took a lot of different elements and they were, I mean, I would have liked to seen those guys got to stick around a little longer.
yeah, and I'm a huge like rap fan too. So I mean, honorable mentions, I gotta give it to like Yellow Wolf, because I think he's very eclectic as well
Yeah.
in styles, and I think that's pretty cool, you know.
Well, those are some excellent choices, my man. Last one would be your favorite wrestler ever.
Oh my God. Ever. Holy, that's a tough one. There's so many people that are so good. Um, I loved Rick Rude growing up because he was just so good at, getting you to hate him. He
Yeah.
was so great at that. Guy was brilliant. I loved Randy Savage. He was just genius.
Intense.
I was a big Piper guy, man.
Loved Piper, man.
It's
Piper.
that guy. That broke me when he passed.
I got to meet Roddy at a Days of the Dead convention, and this is just a cool story, real fast. But this is just the type of guy this dude was right here. This is what kind of guy he was. So he has a line from here to Lexington. I mean, just a massive line, and he's got like 5 handlers, taking money for him. And he's the sweetest dude. And we finally get up to him. My little boy's probably 2 or 3 at the time. He's tiny. And I got him dressed as Leatherface, and I'm carrying him around, and he gets a kid. He's like, man, I'm telling you, he said, you're doing it right. And I was like, what's that? I thought he was just talking about holding him or something. He said, I can tell you're a good dad. I was like, well, I appreciate that, man. That means a lot coming from me. He's like, no, for real. He said, I can tell, I'm a family man. Well, anyways, we talked to him, and, I let my little boy pick a picture out, and we take a photo. We leave and don't get the picture. He chased us down through that convention hall. He could have had anybody to say, go find, if he wanted, he didn't even have to do that. But he took off, he said, hey, you forgot something. And I was like, man, thank you. And he's like I said, you're doing good. And I was like, holy cow, man. I was like, that's just what kind of human being that guy was. I mean,
I never had the privilege of meeting him before he passed, and that breaks my heart because it sounds like he's every bit the legend that I figured he would be.
Yeah. And I've met a lot of old classic, professional wrestlers, but something about Piper, and I wasn't like a huge, but the respect I had for him was massive. But just to meet him and him, like there was something that was really, because he was genuine, very genuine. I mean, and I can tell a genuine person. I can pick, they ain't nobody gonna fake me out. I can tell who's for real and who ain't. He was the real deal.
Oh, absolutely. So if I had to pick a favorite, I feel like if we go modern, just because of the brilliant mind and being a fan of horror, and it felt like a horror movie every time you saw this dude, Bray Wyatt has to be the guy. Just next level genius.
Losing him was huge to this modern era, I guess you would say. It was, and it's, I was a big fan of Luke Harper that was with Bray Wyatt from the Wyatt family. I thought he was an underrated worker. I liked his look. He had the Bruiser Brody, the big beard and long hair, man. And when he, just the story about how he passed away, and he was on that Peloton bike and got sick. I mean, and like Bray, I mean, he had COVID and had never recovered from it, and it must have messed with his heart from everything I had read. It's just so tragic, dude.
The fact that these cats are all younger than me and they're not here anymore, it just blows my mind.
They're athletic, they're athletes. They're supposed to be, they're taking care of themselves as good as they can. It's not like the 90s and 80s when they're popping pain pills and, running up on the road drinking and swarping.
Yeah.
These guys are usually, with their families or in the gym or playing PlayStation. I mean, it ain't like the old days.
Yeah, it just blows my mind. It's just that confirming, cementing the fact that when it's your time, it's your time.
Everybody's, everybody's got a time, and they've got a
non-negotiable. I mean,
it is, and you never know, man. Like there's been people that's passed away here from overdoses and stuff that I've went to school with and stuff, and it's just, I mean, it's absolutely, like you said, man, it's heartbreaking that I'm late 30s, and I know I'm no spring chicken, but that's still kind of early to go, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hitting 41 in January, and I'm like, how did I even make it to this? I mean, when all these cats are going, and when you got a 2-year-old child that's gone, and it's just like, I have a cousin that passed at like 15, 16, and it's like, nothing's promised, man.
You never know, man. You just really never know. And it's a wake up call, I guess you would say, for a lot of people, but not to end on no sad note or anything, because it's been a heck of a night. I've enjoyed it, dude. How have you liked it, Keith? Be honest.
I've had such a blast. I'm like, I could do this for hours, dude. Like, don't rush on my account, but I know it's later for you. So you probably dying to hit the hay. And
my little boy, actually, he just got done playing basketball, and he wants to go deer hunting at like 4 a.m. So I don't know if I'm going to, I don't know if we're going to do that or not yet. So yeah, he's, it's, you never can plan for these things. When you got a 14-year-old boy, he's so sporadic, it's, sometimes you'll be laying in bed at 1 o'clock. Hey, Dad, let's run up Taco Bell. Or, I mean, you just never know, and whatever he wants to do, I guess we'll do. But I mean, like I said, I appreciate you coming on. I enjoyed watching you on Keep It Real podcast. got such a good story, Keith. Got such a good
Thank
story,
you.
man. And that's what I like. I like somebody that brings somebody on. It's got all kinds of stuff going on, very interesting. People can, relate to a lot of the stuff you've been through. I mean, you've been hit with tragedy, you climbed, scraped, and clawed, and did things your way, dude.
I appreciate the hell out of you, man. Like that's a huge compliment, and I had such a blast. Cats like you make doing these guest appearances such a pleasure and like such an honor to do it that it makes me optimistic for the next time someone's like, "Hey, do you want to do my show?" I'm like, I hope it's as good as that one because like you look forward to it.
Yeah.
It's like talking to an old friend,
Mhm.
and I dig that. So, honestly, dude, high praise. Thank you so much for such kind words. You hope, in my case anyway, that whatever you went through kind of does something for somebody.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I mean, everything you just said makes it all worth doing. So I appreciate the hell out of that. I've had such a blast. So I appreciate your time. I obviously want to respect your time as well. That's why I was like, I could do this forever, but
Well, I mean, I look like you said, I look for, I like to have a good conversation with interesting people that's right down my alley. And hey, listen, we're cut from the same cloth, my man. I mean, we found that out tonight in less than an hour. The things we like, I mean, we love it. We're passionate about those things.
hell yeah, and I love that you mentioned Taco Bell because I know it's not real food, but I have a soft spot for that, man. I'm a
Oh,
huge Mexican fan, even when it's fake Mexican. I'm like, I know it's poison, but it's pretty dope.
oh yeah. Well, you ain't thinking about that when you're eating a grilled cheese burrito, or I'm not, anyways.
Right.
That's the last thing from my mind.
That's right. Like I know the meat came out of a cocking gun,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna pretend I don't know that because this is delicious.
Close your eyes and eat.
Take one for the team.
Well, Keith, listen, man, it was an absolute blast, an honor to have you on here. I look forward to having you on again. We're going to do this again. I had a great time, and just keep hitting home runs like you have been, buddy.
I appreciate you, man. I had such a blast. You name when, and I'll be there because dude, this, like I said, I do this all the time. If you want it, that's I had so much fun.
Well, good, but the next time we do this, we need to do a special episode. We need to come up with something cool. We need to break it down. We'll find something. We may ask the fans what they'd like to see us break down, and we may do that. I mean, is that cool with you?
I'd love that, dude. That'd be so rad. Um, yeah, stuff like that's so much fun. So that'd be cool as hell.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, give my man Tattness, Keith McCleary, a like on Facebook. Where else can they reach you at, Keith, to keep up with you? Because you got so much going on. They need to keep up with you.
Yeah, man, IMDb pretty much shows a lot of what I got going on. But yeah, Facebook, if you want to follow the page or whatever. Tattness Radio is my radio show. I actually have a show coming up I'm gonna be doing very soon. That is a 90s special. Kind of talk about how the 90s was the last era that really had its own defining style and things like that, because after that it was all technology. It wasn't fashion and things like that. Let's be real, 90s were this the last decade that has a discernible look that and get into that and just play 90s music the whole time and nostalgia trip for people. So
Like a good time, dude.
it's gonna be a blast, I think. So Tattness Radio Facebook page, hit me up there. There's so many places, man. Google search my name and a bunch of stuff comes up I forget about. I don't like, yeah, I'm never that dude. I don't like, I don't pay for like fake numbers and
Right.
stuff like that. So like I don't even promote my own stuff. I'm just like, people figure it out.
Yeah.
I hate turning someone's show into a commercial. It feels so cheap. So like I'm terrible for that. My bad.
Hey, listen, like I said, thanks for coming on. We're going to do this again. Thank you, Bose Tractor Works, Appalachian Hills 11. for sponsoring the show. Huge shout out to my good buddies at Doomsday Crypt, John Henderson. Thank you. And listen, Keith, don't be a stranger.
Oh, hell.
Everybody check out the previous episodes. There's usually something for everyone with me, because this is a variety show, whether it's UFC, hard rock, scary movies, I mean, pro wrestling, you name it, there's something on here. So we will see you on down the road. Thanks for tuning in. Keith McCleary, Adam Newsom, we're out of here.